Hey there, everybody. To you a little bit late today, but coming to you with our parenting segment to talk about 3 tips to encourage a growth mindset in our children. I'm Valerie Ling. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm also the director and founder of the Center for Effective Living. Incidentally, the Center for Effective Living is a group psychology practice that actually has quite a high percentage of children and adolescents who come through our doors every week. So this is a topic for me today that is probably close to uppermost in my mind, and I thought maybe it might be something that you could be interested in as well. So if you are joining me live, welcome to an evening segment of my live. Now, where am I? Okay. So the growth mindset, what is that? What is the growth mindset? Have you come across that before? Maybe I'm actually quite curious if you have actually come across the concept growth mindset, and you are listening or watching this on the replay. I'm actually curious to see how many people have come across this concept. So, just give me a yes, you have heard about it, or a no if you haven't heard about it. I've actually been reading a book. It's not a new book. It is the growth mindset that was written basically by the researcher who came up with this idea of a growth mindset. A growth mindset is basically a mindset where a child believes that they can build any skill if they try and they keep working at it. It's really a belief, an inherent belief, that there is an unlimited amount of resources and potential that they can play around with to actually develop new skills, new ways of doing things, and to keep building on their strengths. Now, if you kind of sit back with it and think for a moment, you think, well, that's kind of intuitive, isn't it? That sort of makes sense. Isn't that what we're doing with our children when we're actually encouraging them to try new sport, to play music instruments, and to be adventurous? Well, yes. The activities themselves don't necessarily mean that children have cultivated a growth mindset, because when I talk about the fixed mindset, you might actually start to detect the fixed mindset as a theme that tends to emerge a little bit more, certainly in our education system, and probably sometimes in the way that even you and I think about our abilities. So what is the fixed mindset? The fixed mindset basically believes that you either got it or you don't, talents and abilities wise. The belief that basically what you're born with is pretty much what you've got. Some of us are going to be the sporty ones. Some of us are going to be the creative ones. Some of us are going to be the musical ones. Some of us are going to be the bookish ones. So it's a fixed mindset in that there is an inherent belief that you are basically given your lot, your resources, and yeah, you can kind of work out strategies and ways to get around that. But by and large, that's pretty much what you've got. And so the aim of the game, therefore, is to maximize situations where you can make use fully of your strengths and avoid situations where you're actually more likely to fail, or situations where you might actually even get laughed at, or you might actually get sort of put more in a discomfort zone of not being good at it. Okay, so the idea in Dweck's, if you watch the video that I posted on the page, it gave a little bit of a rundown about the growth and fixed mindset. And the idea is that if we as adults can actually spot the fixed mindset, first of all, and encourage the growth mindset, we might actually help our children to eventually inherently adopt a growth mindset. So I've got 3 tips for you about encouraging the growth mindset, but I will just tell you a short story that will highlight to you perhaps why I've been thinking about the growth mindset myself. And that comes from actually having talked to a child not too long ago about a particular anxiety that they were having about a school assignment. Now, the school assignment was given, and they were kind of just drifting into conversation and out of conversation, dropping, dropping a little bit here and there that, oh, we've got this assignment. A couple of days later, oh, I've got that assignment that I'm not quite sure about. A couple of days later, I've got that, I'm not really enjoying that assignment. Now, when a child comes to you with that many thoughts about an issue that are being dropped a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, at a little bit at a time, it probably suggests that they've got something on their mind. But a child also has to be ready to talk about it. For me, children's sense of vulnerability and their levels of trust in a particular situation is rather delicate and rather tender. It's like a garden. You kind of have to not trample all over it. You kind of have to walk really gently on the path first, look, observe, and wait for the opportunity when the child is actually ready for you to enter in and sit down with them and talk about it. And so the first thing is actually identifying when a fixed mindset might be starting to creep up. And it usually will have the sorts of things that this child was starting to say about this particular assignment. I'm just not good at this subject, or other people are doing better at it. That person's idea is a better one, so I better choose this other idea. I'm not so sure if I went this way that it's going to work out. So I think I'm just going to do this instead. What you're starting to hear basically is a sense that I'm not sure if I've got what it takes. I don't want to take a leap into the task. Other people are probably going to be better at it. So I'm just going to bring it down to something bite-sized that I can manage, that I'll be confident in and will be safe for me. So you got to spot it. And when you spot it, it's worth just waiting a little bit, hanging in the backdrop, just to see how much more of that is going to come out. Now, in this particular child, when we actually got around to talking about it and we started to probe a little further, it was apparent that they were actually believing that this particular subject was not their strength, and that this particular assessment was going to overwhelm their natural resources or their ability to actually not even just do well, but just to do something that wouldn't be a disappointment to the teacher, and it wouldn't be a point of embarrassment when they brought it out. So the first thing we did was to actually talk about creating a new relationship with the assignment, creating a new relationship with the task. So that's my first tip, is to put the task away and actually look at the relationship that we're having, or the child is having, with the task. And in this particular instance, the child was actually looking at the task as something that was going to evaluate them, something that was actually going to confirm that they weren't particularly up to the task. Instead, one of the benefits of video games at the moment is you can actually talk about this whole idea that if you persist in a video game long enough, if you practice at it, if you keep at it, if you explore the twists and the turns and the landscape of a particular game, you eventually build mastery. Not only do you eventually build mastery, but you actually eventually unlock abilities and powers and talents that you didn't actually have. That is one of the beauties of being able to use video games as an analogy of how our brain can actually work. Unlock the relationship. Look at the assignment as a way of actually discovering some new skills, some new superpowers that your brain might actually have that you didn't actually even know existed. Recast the relationship with the task to be an adventure, to be something that you don't have to actually prove to anybody that you can or you can't do, but you're actually curious to find out, gee whizzes, how far can I go? What exactly will I discover? What haven't I actually really looked at? So that's the first thing. The second thing I'm going to say about that is, once the child that engages in that initial exploration, when they've unlocked themselves from the actual task and they're actually seeing it as an exploration of possibilities and resources and ideas, praise the process. Praise that process, right? You want to say, wow, I'm actually really impressed that you're sitting down here and not just looking at the question that was given to you, you're looking at some other stuff that could go into it as well. Praise the strategy of experimenting with thoughts and ideas and resources. Praise the persistence of coming back at it, taking a rest, stepping back, sleeping over it, picking it up again the next day, not being intimidated by the task, and chipping. Praise the process, right? Because when we praise the process, what we're actually saying is, kiddo, I am looking at you grow, and it is one impressive piece of work and process. I am seeing your brain muscle develop and grow. So praise the process. The second is to help them to see that in actual fact, part of the mindset of the growth mindset is that they themselves get a sense of satisfaction and enjoyment in actually figuring out some new ways of doing things and a new ways of looking at things, right? And that at the end of the day, they get to give themselves a bit of a pat on the back and say, wow, I didn't know that I could do that. Or wow, I didn't actually really know that that's how I would feel about it, right? So praise the experience, the internal experience as well. Bring that out, draw that out. In the particular case of the child that I was talking with in the assignment, it took a little bit of doing, and it was a little bit of a journey. And at the end of the process, we talked about really what were some of the things about this particular subject that they actually really enjoyed, and what were some of the things that they had seen their friends enjoy that they may not have actually experimented with or tried out. And what we did was to actually set up, some small steps for them in their private space, not in the public space, for them to actually go and try some of that stuff out. And then we actually looked then at the whole idea behind the assignment to actually figure out, if you didn't have to actually hand the assignment in, what would be one thing that would be really interesting or would be really exciting for you to say, wow, I did that. Or I kind of, had a bit of a look at this, right? And when we got through the process, this child actually said to me, so what you're saying basically is that if I put the assignment aside and if I actually really didn't think about what I was afraid of, and I actually looked at what this idea that I needed to look at, what you're saying is the sky's the limit. And I'm like, yeah, pretty much. The sky's pretty much the limit. You don't have to just stay with what's in your room to try to figure out how to make the assignment work. You can go completely outside of your room. You can go completely outside of the piece of paper that's telling you what you need to do. The sky is pretty much the limit. And when we recast that to then their sense of mastery and their sense of adventure in the task just became a task that wasn't so much about being evaluated. It was really about them unlocking their superpowers and taking control and mastery over their environment and over the situation that they were in. So that's my 3 tips to encourage a growth mindset. I'm a little bit energetic tonight. I realized it must be the caffeine I've had to prop me up today. But let me know if you've encountered that, the growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, and how you see it playing out. I'm going to go offline now, wishing you a happy evening.